For those of you who stayed inside and haven't watched the news already, the total solar eclipse was an event that took the world by storm. And for weeks, months, and even years on end was an extremely anticipated event. 2 Mondays ago on April 8th, 2024, people in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, along with several other parts of the Western Hemisphere, got to witness a total solar eclipse experience. And it was unlike anything the majority of us have ever seen before. Most people were very excited to see the total solar eclipse, as it was an extremely rare event and another likely won't be coming for decades. While the majority of the masses just see this as another day, there are a lot of people who have been seeing this event as one of prophecy. This is all because several strange coincidences are lining up perfectly with the eclipse, and in this video we will be talking about those very things. For centuries, across many civilizations and nations, people have stared into the sky at its mysteries in amazement. But a major celestial phenomenon that almost every civilization across the entire globe was obsessed with was none other than the solar eclipse. Many people in the past have tried to make sense of all its signs and wonders, looking for a deeper meaning. It's been a tradition that has lived on for centuries and even a few millenniums, as to this very day, staring at the stars and looking for a deeper meaning is still consistently being practiced. One reason why we believe it's important, we look back on what past civilizations believed the solar eclipse represented, is that in almost all ancient civilizations, the eclipse represented a time of big change in worldly tradition, whether it was a time of greatness or even a pending doom. For centuries, many astronomers, scientists, and even occultists have divided the world into several different eras based on astronomy alone. According to NASA, a total solar eclipse only happens when the moon passes between the sun and Earth, completely blocking the face of the sun. This total eclipse has been labeled as a special one by those in the astronomy community due to the fact the world won't see another one for at least 2 decades. Although there were advisory warnings in many cities and some even lost power or cell service, many have found this all too strange over why states of emergency were put into place for a total solar eclipse. For those of you confused by that last statement, we have captured a few clips from news stations from towns where those warnings were in full effect.
Also new at 5, we are less than a month away from a total solar eclipse, and now the National Guard is being called in to help with all the extra tourists. McCurtain County requested the help as thousands of people are expected to flood into southeastern Oklahoma to see that eclipse. Officials in McCurtain County, with a population of 30,000, expect upwards of 100,000 people to visit, which could put an obvious strain on resources. The Oklahoma Highway Patrol and Choctaw Nation are also helping prepare. Be a busy time for sure.
Boy, it is.
The real question here is, why were they warning the residents about finding shelter and stocking up on supplies if it's only supposed to darken the sky for a few short moments? The whole state of emergency thing seems strange and definitely doesn't quite add up with myself or many of you watching this video. So you might be asking yourselves, why exactly would they say something like that? If we listen to this next news clip from a Texas station that asks an emergency official about why they made safety precautions, he declares it was to prepare for a pending emergency.
The unknowns, not knowing how many people are coming, we could exhaust our resources really quick.
We are counting down to the total eclipse, now less than a month away. Kendall County, the latest, issued a disaster declaration ahead of next month's total eclipse. At least 3 other counties in central Texas, along with the Hill Country, that are in the path of totality, have already issued disaster declarations, include Bell County, Travis County, and Kirk County. While we are familiar with what a disaster declaration means for wildfire, maybe even severe weather, what do they mean when it comes to an eclipse? East 4 San Antonio, Stephanie Esquivel is getting answers tonight from local officials.
Issuing a disaster declaration ahead of next month's eclipse is a proactive measure Kendall County officials are taking to ensure enough resources are available in case of an emergency.
We're not going to be able to rely on our regular mutual aid partners because they're coming from counties that are experiencing the same issues we are. So it just gives us a little bit better avenue to reach out for the state for additional resources or supplies or things like that should we need them.
Emergency Management Coordinator for Kendall County, Jeff Fink, says he wants to be prepared for any emergency that could arise.
But what emergency are they expecting a solar eclipse to cause exactly? If we go back to ancient times, many pagan civilizations used to look at solar eclipses as a sign of apocalypse. They believed the eclipse was a symbol of the end times, and with its presence, many disasters would occur. These ancient civilizations would perform ritual offerings and sacrifices to their gods in response to the eclipse, as they believed it was a sign from them, while others saw the solar eclipse simply as the planet going through a death and rebirth phase. This is what occultists to this very day use an eclipse to represent. They perform special rituals and sacrifices for those occasions that can only be done under a solar eclipse, so this has been a well-anticipated day by occultists all over the world. Even in the Bible, it speaks of disasters following what seems to be none other than a solar eclipse. In the Holy Bible, it speaks of prophecies that are filled by the presence of a total solar eclipse. In Acts 2:20, it says the sun will be turned into darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord. But could this verse be speaking about a total solar eclipse be a sign of the second coming of Yeshua or Christ? Yet we also see another sign in Luke chapter 21 verse 25, which states there will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. And what greater sign in the sky that would be than a total solar eclipse? Something else that many people all over the internet have pointed out is that the total solar eclipse was set to pass over 2 U.S. cities named Nineveh. For those of you who don't know, Nineveh was actually the name of a great fallen ancient civilization that was full of wickedness, debauchery, and corruption. Although Nineveh fell about 27 centuries before the one we're currently in, this is still important information that many of us overlook when studying the history of our world. In the Old Testament of the Bible, it speaks about the Lord talking to a man named Jonah 6 or 7 centuries before the birth of Christ. God ordered Jonah to travel to Nineveh to warn the people and preach against their sin. God wanted Jonah to tell the residents that they're worshiping false idols and to repent of their sins. If not, God will destroy their city. While many of us have pretty much heard the story of Jonah more than once, this is still ironic information that should not be taken with a grain of salt. But what's truly ironic is this total solar eclipse soared over 2 cities named Nineveh, one in Indiana and the other in Ohio. But what's truly crazy about all this is that in the Bible it speaks the signs of Jonah being a symbol of Christ's return. In the book of Matthew chapter 12 verses 38 through 40, it openly states, "Then some of the Pharisees and teachers of the law said to him, 'Teacher, we want to see a sign from you.' He answered, 'A wicked and adulterous generation asks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Truly powerful and prophetic words. Many people believe that the fact that the eclipse just so happened to pass over both cities named Nineveh could indicate this being a biblical prophecy coming to fruition. While no one knows the day or the hour, and it's a moment that might not come for a very long time, it's a sign that something biblical is indeed coming. Millions of us already know we are living in very strange and questionable times. We are living in a time now where people have abandoned God and the teachings of God in favor of self-worship and a longing for immortality. Add all these strange parallels up with the odd responses from emergency officials and you will understand why people were concerned. When it comes to the occult, many of us know the significance of the eclipse. These occultists often use the eclipse as a representation of the death and rebirth of the world as we know it. Many people have heard the rumors of a new world order, but in order for it to take place, the old world must be catastrophically destroyed.
An historic moment. We have in this past year made great progress. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Now's a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it.
The preceding announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
It's no secret that the occult has deeply cherished the solar eclipse as they see it as a sacred day they perform their unique rituals on. These occultists already knew that the eclipse would not only take place on that particular date, but that they would hype it up as a significant point in time. While many people just viewed the eclipse as a normal day, a spiritual shift definitely happened, which we might not see the effects of immediately, but we definitely will within the coming months and possibly even years. Many pagan civilizations believed the eclipse had an apocalyptic or cryptic meaning. These occultists have studied these pagan teachings down to a science and are using it for the same purposes they did, their strange rituals. While the majority of us don't know what those rituals are and what they symbolically mean, something odd is definitely going on in the world, and it all seems to connect to this past total solar eclipse. It appears that they have symbolically chosen this particular date and time to represent their grand rebirth. While we can't necessarily see what change this new age will bring, something that we can see are the signs that are being hidden in plain sight and shown right in front of our faces. Many people watching this will write some of these bullet points off as conspiracy theories, but in fact, I'm here to spread the truth and enlighten the world on what is actually taking place and going on. While total solar eclipses have happened throughout the centuries, this one just seems to hit entirely different. But the odd coincidences don't stop there. As quoted from Fox News just a few weeks before the eclipse happened, several states and some Texas counties that will be in the path of totality during the April solar eclipse have issued warnings and states of emergencies ahead of the event. But what's truly odd about this situation is how emergency officials warned people to stock up on food, water, and fuel for what the masses thought was just an ordinary day. While that alone just seems extremely strange, the situation regarding the Nineveh names is something that can't simply be overlooked just because of the direction the eclipse went. Like it was mentioned earlier in the video, Nineveh was the name of the city that God sent Jonah to warn the people about their sins and was used to save the people of Nineveh before he destroyed their great and lavish city, which he did. Some people have seen the Nineveh names as a clear warning and sign from God, which is ironic considering the fact that America has become the very country that seems to be under the wrath of God. Another coincidence is that the Israeli people are preparing to perform the red heifer sacrifice in April as well. The red heifer sacrifice is also seen as biblical prophecy. Throughout almost 1900 years of exile, the Jewish people yearn to return to Israel, build the third temple in Jerusalem, and restore the temple service. Sounds about right, huh? Overall, there is strong historical evidence that would suggest that the ancient pagan civilizations used to also see the total solar eclipse as a sign of the end times sent by the gods they worshipped, while others just simply saw it as the next great era of their nation and the rebirth of the world. Now, in my opinion, I don't necessarily think we're in the last days. Only God knows when that day will be, and He alone is the only one with the power to make that decision. All we can do is prepare for the signs of His return and what's to come. While the groundbreaking news of the total solar eclipse made major headlines throughout the entire Western Hemisphere and many parts of the globe, there's actually a solid reason that those in power have hyped up this total solar eclipse, and we will not just get into the conspiracies, but the facts. For those of you who may not know, April 8th was not just the day that millions of us celebrated the total solar eclipse, but it fell on the 120th anniversary as the birth of the Lima. If you're unfamiliar with the Lima, it is the false religion created by the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley. Crowley officially wrote the Book of the Law on April 8, 1904, exactly 120 years to the very date of this past eclipse. Back in the spring of 1904, when Crowley was visiting Egypt with his new wife to enjoy their honeymoon, they set up a lodge and began to perform ancient Egyptian rituals. She then led Crowley to a museum, to the steel mortuary known as the Stele of Anak. This led Crowley to experience a supernatural experience on April 8, 1904, where he claimed he was visited by a spirit named Alice, who was a messenger of Horus. Crowley claimed that he was the prophet of the deity Horus and that he was meant to bring the new age known as the Aeon of Horus. And over the course of 3 days, Crowley wrote down everything he learned from interacting with these spirits. Throughout the experience, Crowley came to the conclusion that do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law and the representation of the new age. Crowley later published what he learned from the experience, calling it the Book of the Law. He then used the teachings of the Book of the Law to create his own religion called the Lima. And to this very day, April 8th is still seen as a sacred day as the birth of the false religion of the Lima. 120 years later, the same day that is celebrated by the Lemites is the anniversary of the Lima happened to fall on the same exact day this past total solar eclipse happened. This is one very strange coincidence that really shouldn't be taken with a grain of salt, but it also explains why they made the eclipse seem so special and overhyped. Both the ancient civilizations and occultists alike see the eclipse as a symbol of total rebirth. This is the real dark reason why they have hyped up this eclipse to such a great extent. They used it to stamp none other than the fulfillment of Aleister Crowley's Age of Horus prophecy. Possibly the most famous follower of Crowley's teachings was none other than English songwriter and musician David Bowie. While he was an open occultist, he often spoke about this very day they were waiting for on April 8th, 2024. In the music video for his hit song Black Star, which starts with a total solar eclipse, we can see Bowie's body flying up there, and a lady which is supposed to represent the Scarlet Woman taking his teachings back to the New World, which is represented by a skull. Another strange coincidence surrounding the eclipse is that NASA fired 3 rockets into the moon's shadow on April 8th in an operation they called APEP. The operation was actually named after the Egyptian pagan god Apep, which just so happens to be the serpent deity from ancient Egyptian mythology, which is the nemesis of the sun deity Ra. NASA claimed that they were launching these rockets to investigate how that drop in sunlight and temperature affects Earth's upper atmosphere. While that's what NASA claimed to bring hype to the eclipse, it might just be a big cover-up for an occult purpose that's far more sinister. This all seems to be connected to this very scene in the Black Star music video where they show the skeleton flying to the solar eclipse. Many people who already know the truth about Bowie's devotion to Aleister Crowley's teachings believe that NASA sent exactly 3 rockets to represent the fact that Crowley wrote the Book of the Law in only 3 days, and in Freemasonry they believe in the 3 lights of Masonry: the sun, the moon, and the Master of the Lodge. After researching everything surrounding this eclipse, it seems this all symbolically represents the anniversary of the Lima. The fact that NASA chose that very day to launch these rockets shows that they truly know what's going on while the masses don't have a clue in the slightest. In this scene of the Black Star music video, these are people performing what's called a Gnostic Mass, which is a common Thelema ritual. In some of David Bowie's final songs while he was alive, he talked about his soon departure and how sad he was he wouldn't see the very day he waited his entire adult life for, which is the day most modern occultists have waited years and even decades to witness. But there was yet another music video that prophesied this past total solar eclipse as well. That music video was none other than Black Hole Sun, which to this very day is the #1 hit of the grunge and alternative metal band Soundgarden, who were based out of the early Seattle grunge scene that paved the way for bands like Nirvana. When you see the lyrics of the chorus of this song, Black hole sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? Black hole sun, won't you come, won't you come, won't you come? The black hole sun they are referring to is none other than the total solar eclipse. A black hole sun is a total solar eclipse as the sun turns pitch black when the moon is in front of it, which causes it to look like a black hole. While the chorus of the song obviously states that this past total solar eclipse was exactly what they were talking about, the music video has even more strange and symbolic energy that prove they were talking about this eclipse. The video starts with the band performing in front of the sky, while on the other side they show a group of religious people where one of them holds up a sign stating the end is nigh. These two scenes are supposed to represent the two sides of the world's ongoing spiritual battle. One side is obviously representing the occult and preaching their teachings, while the other is representing those preaching the Abrahamic religions, which compose of the sacred text known as God's teachings. This doesn't represent the literal apocalypse, but the end of the world's old way of life and the beginning of none other than the Age of Horus. While the video is full of nothing but strange transitions, apocalyptic imagery, and the weird actors in the video turning reptilian-like in appearance, this was a prophetic video that to this very day catches millions of people off guard. While only God's science and the cosmic shifts in the universe can determine when a total solar eclipse or a global apocalypse can happen, these occultists obviously waited patiently for this moment in time to happen to fulfill their prophecies, and it actually happened. While no man, woman, or child knows when the tribulation will actually happen, these occultists have been waiting to mark the end of the world symbolically using supernatural moments like the total solar eclipse. These occultists use that very moment in time to mark the end of the old age of life and the start of the new age. While there's many non-spiritual people watching this video that don't believe in this sort of stuff, you can verify this by simply doing deep research into these type of topics. No matter what your take is on this, Aleister Crowley indeed created the Lima on April 8, 1904. The total solar eclipse just so happened to fall on its monumental 120th anniversary. The authorities in several states actually declared a state of emergency, and the total solar eclipse actually passed through two cities named Nineveh. While there were many theories online for weeks and months on end surrounding the total solar eclipse, these four facts just stated are undeniable proof that both the celestial and worldly changes come. Ever since COVID-19 hit the earth in late 2019 and became widespread in the first few months of 2020, the world has changed completely and a new normal began. That new normal was just an extra step in the formation of none other than the Age of Horus. For those unfamiliar with the Age of Horus, it is one of the 4 aeons that are studied in occult theology, divided into quarters as different representations of the world's timeline. Occultists like Aleister Crowley have broken down the history of our world into 4 spiritual eras. Each era seems to embark its own spiritual and global purpose and significance. The old age of life that we were all born in was the Age of Osiris, which was ruled by Abrahamic religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, the 3 main religions that not only taught us how to be better people, but have given us the structure we couldn't have lived without. But as much as multiple generations have played a role in standing up for those beliefs, morals, and different religions of faith, Aleister Crowley believed his whole mission in life was to destroy it all. Crowley claimed that he was the prophet of Horus to bring the end of the old age of Osiris, and as a result corrupted our world. The old Aeon of Osiris ended in 2012 when multiple conspiracy theories started floating around that year would be the end of the world. What all this was referring to was the end of the old age of life and the beginning of the new. The movie 2012 was just pure symbolism of that very theory. While the majority of us were just staring into the sun with no real thought of it at all, real occultists were honoring the birthday of the Lima and celebrated the completion of the Age of Horus. What many people don't know is these occultists were performing real dangerous spiritual rituals and dark sacrifices. Many of the elites who run our world and influence major global decisions are either Thelemites or members of the Ordo Templo Orientis, otherwise known as the OTO. Both of these cults used the eclipse to honor what Crowley did for the world and marked a very important day in the world of the occult. The whole entire reason they have used the eclipse to symbolically mark the start of the Aeon of Horus is because the eclipse was a symbol of their pagan gods. In medieval alchemy, it symbolized the Nigredo, the first stage in the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, representing both the decay and the promise of rebirth. For those of you who are familiar with the Harry Potter franchise and watched the movies growing up, you will notice that the first book in the movie was originally named the Philosopher's Stone before Scholastic changed it for the United States releases. One of the main reasons why they changed the title to the Sorcerer's Stone is because of the direct reference to the Philosopher's Stone in alchemy, which is a real form of occult magic. Alchemists believe the Philosopher's Stone can be used for many magical purposes. They believe that with the Philosopher's Stone, they can turn any base metal into gold, but they can also become immortal. While many of these occultists have chased immortal life and the things that come with it, nobody can truly live forever, which has been a hard reality for them to accept. Alchemists to this very day still believe that they can achieve immortality through the Philosopher's Stone and chase the high that comes with it. But even the most powerful occultists know deep down in their hearts the world will eventually end. While many people thought the world was going to end on December 21st, 2012, you gotta remember 2012 was just a movie that Hollywood made to warn us about the end of the Aeon of Osiris, and that particular date in 2012 was also the end date of a 5,126-year-long timeline, which was in the Mesoamerican long count calendars predicted by the Mayans of ancient civilizations. It's no secret that the structure of our world has changed significantly throughout the ages. What Aleister Crowley and the majority of occultists all believe is that the entire existence of the earth was divided into 4 spiritual aeons. The age of Isis, the age of Osiris, which we were all born in, the age of Horus, which is the age we just entered, and finally the age of Ma'at, which is the 4th and final age that will happen years in the future. While the differences and significances of the 4 ages will eventually be featured on this channel as a topic in a future documentary on their own, it's important to know what the age we recently entered truly represents. The Age of Horus is the age ruled over by the conquering pagan god Horus. Horus was believed to be the false god of kingship, healing, protection, the sun, and the sky. Widely considered to be one of the most important gods worshipped by the ancient Egyptians, the impact of Horus cannot be underestimated. The Age of Horus has been described as one of great awakening and spiritual enlightenment, as well as bringing many dark truths to a world that has adopted the overall culture of this new age. It symbolizes a time where the world will sadly almost fully abandon the teachings of Abrahamic religions for a new set of spiritual beliefs, which include a form of self-worship and idolatry. This was clearly all a part of Crowley's twisted plan all along, and millions of us fell for his manipulations, his teachings, and his doctrines. To many occultists and Thelemites, Crowley is seen as a prophet of the fallen demigods and the man who single-handedly brought in the Age of Horus. Just as the Abrahamic religion see Moses as a prophet of God, occultists see Crowley as a prophet of Horus. And even Crowley himself referred to himself as the B666. Crowley believed his whole mission in life was to separate the world from God and the teachings of God, to instead worship themselves and ignore their fear of God. The Age of Horus was conceived on December 21st, 2012, and 12 years later in 2024 was finally ushered in. While researching the Age of Horus, you will often notice a pattern with the number 12. For example, Crowley created the Lima on the day April 8th, which if you add 4 and 8 together equals 12. The Age of Horus also started on December 21st, 2012, which is 12/21/2012. If you rearrange the number 21, you get 12. So that's 12/12/12, which the Age of Horus took 12 years to fully transition. The total solar eclipse just so happened to fall on April 8th, 2024, 120 years after Crowley created the Lima, again pointing to 12, which 120 without the 0 is indeed 12. It's extremely obvious 12 is all over this ritual, and when you look at all the signs, it's clear as day this past total solar eclipse was all about the 120th anniversary of the Lima, but also the start of the spiritual Age of Horus. While Horus officially began in 2024, the plans for this new age definitely took shape in 2012, as life just hasn't been the same since. 2012 was truly the year it felt like a lot of millennials' childhoods truly died right in front of our faces, as the entertainment we watched growing up, the music we listened to, and our definitions of fun just didn't hit the same anymore. While the majority might write this off as just maturing and growing up, we have been a generation extremely touched by nostalgia, even to the point of pure obsession, and this definitely had everything to do with the changing world we were living in. 2012 was not only the year we saw the meteoric rise of social media sites like Snapchat and Instagram, where we could see our friends' stories and locations, but 2012 in general just seems to be a year that the world has never recovered from in general, and many things have changed that have influenced the shape of our dark world that we live in today. It was between the years of 2012 and 2024 that people's views on drugs, violence, war, sex, and most of all, God, were forever demoralized, and it's sad because our morals have just seemed to have gone out the window. If you think about the series of events that have happened in our world this decade, including COVID-19, the wildfires in California, the sky turning red in New York and Canada, lightning hitting the Statue of Liberty, the earthquakes that have been happening in the tri-state, and the fact that many astronomers claim the moon has been rusting and turning red like blood, which can ironically be found in Revelation chapter 6 verses 12 as a sign of none other than the second coming. While no human who has ever lived on this earth knows the day or the hour except Jesus Christ himself, there's plenty of signs indicating that it may be coming sooner than we think. While I personally don't believe we're living in the last year, decade, or century, I still believe we're living in the last millennium before Christ makes the most epic return of all time. While nobody can really predict when that year is going to be, the year 3000 seems like the most logical guess.